Good morning, everybody. When World War I ended in 1918, most thought that maybe humanity had learned its lesson and that war was just a bad idea. And that idea of the futility of war reached its height on this date, July 24, in 1929, when the Kellog Briand pact went into effect. And that basically said that nations would not do war anymore. And about every nation on the planet signed it. This map shows the location of Sarajevo, where the Archduke was shot in 1914. And many observers thought this would be just another local unrest in the Balkans, but it soon turned into a general war in Western Europe, and initially a war of movement. So this map shows us the Schlieffen Plan, the German plan to send 5 armies wheeling through Belgium into northern France in an attempt to capture Paris. And in those early months of the war, there was still a little bit of sense that it's a heroic thing. Here you see the Christmas truce of 1914, where Germans and the British stopped fighting each other and spent some time fraternizing before they got back to the business of killing each other. But any sense of honor and chivalry disappeared with trench warfare, didn't it? Industrialized killing, basically. Trenches stretched from the North Sea down to Switzerland. And all kinds of technologies appeared that were very deadly. The U-boat, pictured here, made its appearance in September 1914. Submarine wasn't invented in World War I, but the Germans used it. In 1915, in January, the first aerial attack on London happened by Zeppelin, and this is clearly aimed at civilians, not soldiers. Also in 1915 was the first use of poison gas by the Germans, and then the British adopted it. And a lot of the ideas behind these new weapons are, well, they'll end the war quicker, but then the other side adopted it. 1916, the tank came as a way to somehow get around all this trench warfare. So by the time the war ended in 1918, the casualties were in the millions. Here's a photo of the memorial at Verdun in France. So the nations of the world said, we've got to do better. There's got to be a way we can not have a cataclysmic war again. So when the great powers met at Versailles, outside of Paris in 1918 at the Versailles Peace Conference, there was hope that some kind of blueprint could come out of it that would establish a framework for world peace. And one thing that came out of Versailles was the League of Nations, forerunner of today's United Nations. And the League had all kinds of great ideas and a blueprint supposedly for international cooperation, including the Permanent Court of International Justice, which is the forerunner of today's World Court. So it's an example of people working together across national boundaries. Another example of international cooperation was the 1921 Naval Conference in Washington, where the naval powers agreed to limit the size of their navies. And Japan was at this meeting. But what was really sticky was what happened to land after World War I. Germany lost some land. The border between France and Germany was very tense. The relationship between the French and the Germans was tense anyway. So the French foreign minister, Mr. Briand, was trying to come up with a way to get some kind of framework, and he enlisted Frank Kellogg. So on the right is Frank Kellogg, our Secretary of State. Mr. Briand is seated on the left. And they started some talks, and they got other nations involved, and eventually our event happened. So July 24, 1929, the Kellogg Briand Pact went into effect. And this is a very clever cartoon. You see the world, the short guy with the scowly globe head, being married to peace, and she's looking kind of aloof, and in her hand it says the Kellogg Treaties. On the little carpet behind him, it says divorced 1914. So what's the future going to hold? Now on the left you see Briand, on the right you see Gustav Stresemann. He was the German minister. He signed the Kellogg Briand Pact. He was a real mover for peace in Germany, but he died in 1929, before the Nazis took over.